We next have Rowena Luk, who got her master's degree here from the iSchool, and then working on the project she's going to talk about in Ghana. And then she then spent some time at Intel Research, and is now actually at a nonprofit, still working on this project in Toronto. Thank you, Rowena.
Is there a clip? I'm going to move back. Okay. No, actually I think I'm fine. I'll just carry this in my hand for the entire talk. Thanks for the introduction, Eric. So just to get us started, I'd like to paint a little bit of a scenario for all of you here. Imagine one day that you fall sick. You know, your legs are numb, you can't really breathe properly. It's very strange. And so, of course, you go to your doctor and you tell your doctor there's this and this wrong with me. And the doctor looks at you, and he looks at your medical chart, and he does some tests. And then he says to you, I have no idea what's wrong with you. And in your case, that's actually not too much of a problem. You know, you'll probably be sent to the nearest hospital or you'll be referred to a specialist. But for a doctor in Ghana, the situation is much more limited. You know, there isn't as many people he can turn to for extra advice or that extra bit of information that he's missing. And why should this be the case? Why can you not imagine a world in which a doctor can just take a picture of a skin segment or a cell sample, put it on a computer, and then have specialists all around the world log in to provide a few words of advice or guidance that could make the difference in a patient's life? Well, there are lots of reasons why this doesn't work. One of them is power. It's intermittent. It goes out a lot, even in the capital city in Ghana. Another is network connectivity. If you have a local internet cafe available, sometimes the internet connectivity goes down a lot, and when it's up, the bandwidth is low. And it can also be quite expensive. If you're a doctor, chances are you have a mobile phone, but coverage is quite spotty, especially in the north. And even if you can get coverage, you probably have to call a few times in order to get through, just because there's so much network congestion on the different networks that you're working on. And then even if you can get through, how do you know who to call in the first place? The vast majority of hospitals in Ghana don't have landlines. The ones that do have landlines are smart enough never to answer them because they'd be so overloaded. And then there's no physical directory of the doctors in Ghana, of all the doctors in Ghana, for a variety of reasons. One of them being because they're so mobile and they move around so much. Our colleagues and I have come up with one possible solution to these problems, and you can think of it as a kind of Facebook meets real-world consultation. Okay, well, not really, but, it's one way of thinking about this project. And in the next few minutes, I'll walk you through the context for the work that we're doing, the solution that we came up with, and touch briefly on some of the partnerships we formed along the way and how those worked out. So it all begins in December of 2005 when Melissa goes to Ghana for the first time. And she sits down with a nurse there, and she asks the nurse, what do you think about electronic medical records? And the nurse laughs at her and she says, we can't even get the paper records right. And this is undeniably true. I mean, the paper records are incomplete, they're missing all the time, they rarely get referred to because they don't have a lot of detail. And then another problem is when you have a patient at one hospital, one doctor, who's referred to another doctor at another hospital. What typically happens is that doctor will take a sheet of paper, he'll scribble down a few notes, and he'll give it to the patient to bring to the next hospital. Now, assuming that patient makes it to the next hospital, assuming next that the slip makes it over to the next hospital, the doctor at the second hospital will never actually get to look at that patient's full medical record. We'll often have to rerun tests, recreate the patient's medical history. And in the case of chronic illness in particular, this can be a problem. Another major theme that emerged in that first round of field work was disparity. Disparity in the number of doctors and disparity in the number of specialists. The vast majority of specialists, hundreds of them, are concentrated at Komfanoche Teaching Hospital and Korlebu Teaching Hospital in the urban south, leaving the rest of the country to be serviced by small regional and district hospitals of only 2 or 3 doctors each. In the south, you probably have 1 doctor for every 6,000 people. But in the north, you might have 1 doctor for every 500,000 people. And then you go to the international level, and you start to notice the thousands and thousands, hundreds of doctors that leave the country never to come back. 20% of the doctors that are educated in Ghana are working in the United States today. That's 20%. And here, I'm not even talking about the US, the UK, or Canada. This is just the United States. So what can we do to tie in this expatriate pool of knowledge and use it to build capacity back home. And what do the people back home do in order to make things work in a system which is so obviously broken? Well, they end up doing whatever it is they can. They'll grab someone in the hallway, they'll make a phone call, they'll send off an email to friends, colleagues, classmates, former advisors, anyone that they can think of who will have the information they need. And in this way, they manage to use their social capital in order to squeeze that much more work out of an already overtaxed system. And it's this phenomenon that we're really trying to leverage with the Ghana Consultation Network. This idea that a shortage in human resources, compounded with a broken referral system, leads to a blossoming of informal remote consultation. And how can we leverage this phenomenon? Here we see the timeline of the project as it has taken place over the past 3 years. We did 4 rounds of fieldwork in Ghana, interviewing over 100 doctors in total, and ultimately have deployed our system in 5 hospitals. So after all of this, I'm sure you're all wondering, what is this system? How does it work? What does it look like? To begin, let's say you're one of the doctors in one of the hospitals that we've deployed in. You will log into a local server, and you will log into a local website on your intranet. However, if you're a doctor anywhere else in the world, you can still participate by logging into one of the public servers we have located both in the US and in Ghana. You'll use your login information here, and then you'll come to this screen. And what you see on the screen are 2 boxes. At the top are your cases, and at the bottom are other cases. And what this does is it preserves a sense of personal accountability. At the top are cases that you've created, or that someone has sent to you specifically, possibly a colleague or someone you've worked with before who wants an answer from you. And so you have some incentive to make sure that this is answered, it's updated regularly. And at the bottom is a dynamically rotating list of cases that have been assigned to groups that you're part of, which you might contribute to if you're interested or have a particular bit of expertise on that particular case. So let's say you click on New Consultation. You'll go to a page like this, which looks very much like a medical record, and then you fill it out, and you'll come to this screen. And what's interesting about this screen is that there's quite a few different people you can send the case to. You can send it to the doctor at your referral hospital, which is something you're quite familiar with already. Or you can send it to one of your colleagues who might have some particular expertise on the case that you're working on. Or finally, you can send it to one of the groups that are set up in the system, particularly specialist groups, like the group of cardiothoracic surgeons or what have you. And what this allows you to do is to draw on existing contacts or create new contacts from existing professional networks. And whoever it is that you end up contacting will get notifications by text message as well as by email. And then once you're done the case, you come back to this screen and you'll see your case appear underneath in your cases list. Finally, when a new response becomes available, you can click on that case and you'll see the full case as you created it, as well as the comment that was appended to the bottom. Now, there's various things about walking through the user interface that don't really show you the underlying design principles about what really make this project interesting, and so I'm going to touch briefly on those as well. The very first design principle is this idea of split interaction. Instead of relying on one expensive computer located in a server farm in the States, potentially, we're relying on a variety of small computers that are scattered across Ghana and the US. And the most important fallout of this, there are a few, but the most important one is that as long as there is power available at your local institution, you can log in. The page will load immediately. You'll be able to upload videos, images, and you don't have to wait for those precious few minutes that you don't have to spare. And then the servers themselves will take care of the process of creating a globally synchronous, database of all the information that's in there. Even if the network is going down regularly, even if the bandwidth is unusably low, it'll still be able to synchronize that data. Moreover, you can also shape the traffic in order to make optimal use of off-peak hours with bandwidth or possibly cheaper bandwidth times. The other element is the social networking aspect, which I've already touched on. And this allows you to draw on your colleagues from all across Ghana, as well as the diaspora all around the world. And finally, one crucial aspect of this is the optional overlay on the existing workflow. And what I mean by this is in that previous screen where you saw the option to send it to the referral doctor at your referral hospital. Our system respects the idea that health clinics refer to district hospitals, referring to regional hospitals, referring to teaching hospitals. And it's really important to encode that kind of system into our interface. This has a few fallouts, one of them being that the system now serves two purposes. You can either use it for remote medical consultation, or you can use it for patient referral between hospitals. Another aspect of this is that you're respecting the existing hierarchy of the hospitals, the existing flows of information. And this is part of respecting the local authority and being culturally sensitive. This makes sure that the new model of remote consultation parallels the familiar task of patient referral, which the doctors have already formally incorporated into their system. You have a self-updating hospital directory, which the doctors maintain themselves. And there's a baseline for trust among people that you've worked with in the past or will continue to work through within the system. Finally, the system is optional. We are not advocating the system as an electronic medical record. It's not a replacement for a call on your mobile phone. And it's not a replacement for paper records, because ultimately we're never going to have a system that's more robust than paper, because we do need power. Today, we have more than 125 doctors enrolled in the system, with 40 consultations exchanged among participants from the US, Canada, Mali, Nigeria, South Africa, and the UK. In the last round of fieldwork in which we went to visit Ghana, we actually had some really good conversations with the Ghana College of Physicians and Surgeons, who invited us to integrate training for this program into their workshops, which are provided to all the doctors in Ghana. And this would be a really good way to scale it to a national level. Whether or not we're going to do that is something we're figuring out, but it's kind of exciting that that possibility exists. So finally, a few quick words on partnerships. Obviously, ICT-TED projects can benefit from a huge assortment of partnerships with all sorts of different stakeholders, as Tim mentioned. And one of the difficulties of this is making sure that the interests are aligned. Each of these people have different agendas on the table, and how do you make sure all of these come together and stay together over the lifetime of this project? So in our particular project, we actually partnered with KNET, ISP, the folks that hosted our server in Ghana, as well as Axon Incorporated, which is a web services startup in Ghana. We partnered with the Ministry of Health, as well as the individual hospitals that we set up our technology in. And finally, we partnered with the Ghana College of Physicians and Surgeons Foundation, which is a nonprofit organization in the United States composed of diasporic Ghanaian doctors whose goal is to foster healthcare in the homeland in some way. And so they were strong partners throughout the project, as well as the Ghana College itself, which is located in Ghana. And I'll just talk briefly about some of the lessons we learned with 3 of these partnerships that we had. So the first one is with regards to Axon Incorporated. Now, Axon Incorporated, we've been talking to them throughout the course of this project on the idea that, assuming that it takes off and people are interested in it, they will actually adopt the technology and they'll provide it once we leave the country. However, one of the things I'll stress about this is that we didn't actually co-develop the technology together. And there are a variety of reasons for this. The main one being that we as researchers have the flexibility to try these crazy new ideas, to do something very experimental. And that's one of the great things about being a researcher. But these companies, obviously, you can understand how a project like this might not fit directly into their portfolio from the beginning. And so we didn't co-develop the technology together. And for us, that created a lot of really useful benefits. First of all was the fact that we had complete control over the technology. We could control the features, we could make sure it closely matched the usage needs of the folks in the hospitals, and we could control how it was deployed. However, the drawback, as I'm sure you can imagine, is that once we leave the country, it becomes really hard to support the technology. Now, some people would argue that you need to partner with a technology business from the start. And in response to that, I'd like to point to the current trends with Axon. So right now, Axon has won a bunch of really big contracts with some different agencies. And this has actually diverted its attention away from this project. So if we had partnered with them from the start, this would put us in a really tough situation, especially if they own critical pieces of the code. Now, I'm not advocating for one approach over the other because, by all means, I'm no expert on this, but I'm just saying that either way you go, there's going to be problems, and you need to be aware of what those problems might be. The next partnership I'll talk about is with the Ministry of Health and the different hospitals that we worked in. So the Ministry of Health, we originally approached them because we kind of had to. We were putting these servers in these hospitals and we needed the go-ahead from the higher-ups. And so we talked to the ministry and they showed us a lot of support in the beginning. They introduced us to all these different hospitals. They gave us a lead right in. And this was great at the start because we were able to interview so many people. We were able to visit every single regional hospital in the country and a bunch of the district and clinic hospitals. And we were able to get time to interview these doctors who are already so busy. However, apart from the obvious fallbacks of working with such an institution, one of the main things that we noticed about working with them is that when you're working with a project that sort of has this ministerial go-ahead in it, there's sort of this expectation that the ministry will handle all these issues of refining the technology and supporting it and setting up the training sessions. And so you don't have the kind of local initiative, people really getting engaged in the process of making sure this technology lasts, which is really crucial to making a project like this go forward. The last partnership I'll talk about was with the Ghana College of Physicians and Surgeons Foundation in the USA. And these folks were really great, especially in the first phase of our project, giving us an understanding of medical practice and how it works and Ghana and what it's like. But as the project evolved and continued, one of the things that really became clear is that these doctors are not doctors from Ghana. Even if they've worked in Ghana, even if they've educated there, even if they've spent several years there, the moment they cross the Atlantic, their priorities, their lifestyle, the things that they expect from people changes. I'm almost done. And that makes them a fundamentally different user group. And so as the project evolves, you really get a sense that we're developing two systems, one for the doctors in Ghana and one for the doctors from Ghana in the United States. And this really increases the scope of your project. For us, it was critical, but again, it's something you need to be aware of going ahead. And with that, I will wrap up with a huge thank you to Paul, Melissa, Mathieu, and all the doctors, partners, and everyone else who helped us out along the way.
Are there any questions?
Hi, I was interested in knowing what software packages you ended up using in the system and if free open source software ended up providing any viable options.
Yes, for sure. We actually worked with an existing open source telemedicine package, which actually has much more of a bulletin board functionality to it. People post cases and everyone responds. It's called iPath, and that's an open source project in and of itself. And we've been in constant dialogue with the open source community as we've added, the SMS extensions and the email notifications and various different features to the system. So it is available open source.
I'll ask in advance for everyone to forgive me. I come from Ghana, so I can hardly restrain myself. I have 3 questions, but they're very short.
By all means.
First is, where were the hospitals participating in the project located in the country? How did you get around connectivity problems? And were there any challenges relating to time difference and getting responses in emergency situations?
Those are all really good questions. So to answer all of them, I will admit, so in the first, we've done two pilot deployments so far, and in both of those we focused on the urban south, which is unfortunate because our system is actually targeted towards the north. But we wanted to work in a community which was more accessible, which would take only 2 hours to get to instead of 15 hours to get to from where we were based. And so our first deployments are actually at Central Regional Hospital, Takoradi Regional Hospital, the Dengmes District Hospital at Akosombo, and then later on we added Kompanoche having the greatest infrastructure. Now, with regards to connectivity, that's a good question as well, because for the sake of this project, we relied on hospitals that had, we relied on some hospitals that had existing connectivity, and other hospitals, even as we were working with them and telling them about this project, they signed up and they were able to get DSL in their local area. One of the things that we know it's in the north is that some of the hospitals have partnerships with local internet cafes, but we recognize that there are a lot of hospitals that don't. And the reason that this is even possible, that we're even thinking about it this way, is because of the National Health Insurance Scheme and this promise that the Ghanaian government has made to the different hospitals that they will get wired up. And that is something you're seeing in the growth of computers in all the different areas, and you're seeing the satellite dishes being set up. And so we're hoping that at some point each of them will have some level of connectivity. However, that said, I feel our system is really useful because the hospitals that have connectivity, it's not connectivity as you and I know about it. It's not the kind of stuff I get when I go home. At Kompanoche, which is the second largest teaching hospital in the country and the one that had by far the best infrastructure, the internet was so overloaded that between 8 a.m. and 4 p.m., you tried to load a page and it would take 15 minutes. It became unusably low. Like on our logs that show that they don't have coverage, even though it would come back regularly at 4 p.m. And so in that case, being able to shape the traffic so that it all gets sent at night was really useful to these people who already have a solution in place. And you'll have to remind me of the third question.
If there were any challenges related to time difference in getting
Yeah, the time difference is, well, it's something that we hope to address by the asynchronous nature of what we have. A lot of telemedicine projects focus on setting up face-to-face, video conferencing sessions. Ours is asynchronous in the sense that we have these, records that we're posting and people are appending to that. And so actually one of the features of our system is that it works regardless of the time difference. And that's actually one of the things that we hope makes it really useful to these communities.
Can I just ask a quick question? Are you working collaboratively with other existing initiatives in Ghana that are similar, and particularly with traditional healing telemedicine?
Well, we're not working with traditional healing telemedicine.
In Ghana.
Not traditional healing, because I know there's a lot of controversy around traditional healing methods in Ghana, but I realize that's where the majority of people get their healthcare from. So right now we're focusing on the doctors because it's a lower hanging fruit. They have the money, they're well educated. But the hope is to extend it as the system goes on to include nurses and health workers and possibly these local healers, as it were. We are in dialogue with quite a few different initiatives that are happening in the country. We recently co-wrote a paper with Brian Levine on this telephone project that they have going, and so we keep each other up to date on the kind of projects that are going on, but we're not explicitly working alongside another telemedicine initiative.
All right, thank you very much.